Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Okay, so today I'm going to be interviewing comedian, writer, Ritch Shydner. Now, Ritch and I go way back. We've been friends for 35 years, maybe longer. I used to be a stand-up comedian, and that's where I met Ritch. And why I'm doing a podcast in the health field, you'll have to listen to the first episode, and I kind of explain how I became interested in these kinds of things. So, Ritch, I'm not going to be talking to him about his comedy career, per se. Ritch has struggled over the years with depression, and we talk about the onset of that depression and what it looked like, and some treatments that were tried, and how he has been off of antidepressants now for over 5 years, and how he did that and what that looked like for him. Fascinating interview, and we're old friends, so I hope you get that kind of feeling of two people just sitting in a room talking. So let's listen in. Here we go. This is me talking to Ritch Shydner. When did you first start seeing depression maybe as bigger than what a normal teenager, let's say, would have? Because I think all of us in our teens were troubled and confused and all those kinds of things. Or was there something more severe even then?
I was about 8 or 9 years old. I'd have panic attacks. I didn't know what they were, didn't know what to call them. But there were times I'd lay in my bed and I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. And I just had to suffer it. And I didn't know what to say to anybody. There was nobody to talk to. There were no mental health professionals near my family, in my family. I don't think we even knew the phrase. I just went through them. And all the other terrors that were going on in my childhood, I thought it was just something I had to go through. And never thought about it, just suffered it. And when I started drinking around 12, they ended. It was like one of the byproducts of drinking or whatever that, I don't know why, but they ended for a long time.
So you were self-medicating in a sense at 12 with alcohol?
Yeah.
But when you weren't drinking, like I'm assuming you weren't drinking every day at 12.
No, I wasn't drinking every day, no.
So, but even when you weren't drinking,
they just kind of dissipated. So I don't remember them affecting me after 12 for a long time. It's really weird. I don't remember them I do remember being depressed. In fact, a college girlfriend sent me letters that I wrote her. And I could not believe one of the things that struck me was how many times the word depressed was in those letters. How many times I used the word depressed. I didn't even think I knew the word depressed when I was 19 years old. But they were all over those letters. Depressed, I'm depressed, this is depressing, I'm depressed, this is depressing situation, this is I'm depressed, a lot of that. And I knew that I always had those days when I couldn't do anything, but I didn't know what to call depression. I just didn't feel like doing anything. Couldn't get out of the house, couldn't get out of the bed, whatever, just couldn't do anything. That's all I knew. There were no words for it that I can remember having. But I didn't know I knew the word depressing. I didn't know I knew that word at 19. But there was in those letters, just sitting someone right there.
So it's almost like it was you blocked out that it just like
in my memory, I didn't remember that until I saw those letters. I didn't remember that. I thought if you'd have asked me to describe myself when I was young, been angry, sometimes violent, always kind of doing something out there, alcohol, drugs, fueled, whatever. But I never would have thought I was depressed. And I just sort of didn't remember it.
What about the other children in your family? Have you talked to them about that?
Oh yeah, everybody from one degree or another, except for the 3 out of 4 will say at one degree or another they suffer from depression. And the second one has the anxiety attacks that I had.
And still has that?
Well, he takes medication now, but he had him severe as an adult. He had him where he'd black out behind the wheel of the car. They would attack him just driving down the road. He would get them, and
in your case, was it precipitated by thought, or would it just seem
a lot of fear, Bob? I had a lot of fear when I was a kid. Fear of my dad. Fear of what was going on in the house. So.
And you're in violence?
Yeah, violence. And so I blacked out. I literally blacked out at times. And when my brother told me about it as an adult, I remembered, I went, I had these things too, Randy. I had them when I was younger, where I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, and could literally black out. I feel my body being pulled out from itself. And one time I told that to a psychiatrist. He said, you had dissociative disorder. That describe what you're describing to me is the emotions were so strong you had no way to process them, no way to deal with them. You would literally shut down emotionally. And that's part of what I deal with all the time is that my inability to handle any kind of emotions. They're just too painful. I just had my dog die a few days ago. I mean, we took him to the vet. He was old, and I was okay. Letting him go, hold him, and it was over. I felt myself in that old phrase where I just was swaying like I thought I was going to pass out at the vet's office. And it was all we could do to get home, and I just collapsed in bed, and I was done. I was done for the day.
So you went to sleep?
Yeah, I go to sleep. That's a good description.
Sleep's a good one.
I just go to sleep, but I don't sleep. I just lay there and stare. And I can't fall asleep, but I can't do anything.
So you can't function, but you can't check out completely.
Can't go to sleep.
It's like another state where your mind is just going somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's
not racing.
Yeah.
It's just, it's very strange.
It's like on a shutdown mode or something like that. I don't have it to that degree. I mean, I've been depressed and had anxiety at different times because I think I'm a human being and that just happens. But I always wonder about where that line is between, a normally bad day or a bad reaction. I don't even want to use the word bad, but a strong reaction, and somebody who has a consistent debilitating form of reacting to either life events or their own thoughts. And so the drinking and the drugs did take you
it gave me a freedom from that.
And yet you're saying in those letters you were depressed.
I was depressed. I wasn't completely devoid of any sort of problems in that area, but I didn't have that. I described it like being in a glass coffin. Those attacks, I had the anxiety attacks where I couldn't breathe, but I could see everything was going on around me. It just I felt trapped, paralyzed. I couldn't move. And I couldn't breathe. Or I'd be breathing, like trying to get a breath, trying to catch a breath. And I didn't have that. I don't remember having that for a long time. Once I started drinking, and I think the drinking sort of freed me up from a lot of inhibitions. So I started doing things that physically that maybe took away that. I don't know. I'm not, I don't know. Like I'm dancing and fighting and, sex, all those sort of things sort of.
Yeah,
I sort of put myself out there. Yeah.
Right, well, you're releasing energy at a really high level doing all those things.
I felt more freedom. And then of course, I'm going away to college and I'm getting out of the house on a situation and I'm kind of away from the situation of being at the house and being under the control, under the roof, under the, my dad, who I felt was my oppressor at the time. And, I know my dad loved me, and this is all stuff in the past. We worked out everything, but this is what I felt at the time, and this is what was going on then. Once I got out from that, then I don't think those things were there that would cause me to have those anxiety attacks.
See, I always wonder how much of it, the nature-nurture, discussion, how much of it is there, because I had a very close friend who his whole family, not his mother, but his older sister and himself and his father all suffered from really serious depression, and there wasn't any, didn't appear to me to be any kind of mitigating issues of violence or any kind of abuse. There was nothing like that. It was just something that seemed to get passed along in the family. I don't know why. I mean,
there may be something there. My dad told me he suffered from it when he was young too. But then again, his dad was pretty much with him the way he was with me. It was passed down for generations, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Nurture, nature, it's hard to say. I don't know.
I mean, I could see where if growing up in a house where you're not sure what's going to happen next, is mom or dad going to react in a way that's going to, is there going to be hitting or screaming or yelling, or am I going to get in trouble for something I don't even know what I did? That's a high level of anxiety for anybody to exist in. So I could see why.
Yeah.
There would be an instability at every second.
Yeah, the survival skills you pick up then. Some and outside the artistic field, they don't really help you. Lying is a big one. Lying is a big one.
Yeah.
Yes, because you learn. I'll take a shot at lying if I can come up with something and avoid the trouble right now. Because telling the truth won't help. They'll be punished anyway. So I'll take a shot at lying. Let me fabricate something. Let me try to avoid this pain right now, right here. And there'd be a point where I would lie just because I didn't want to lose the ability to lie. I wanted to stay in practice. It gets to the point where you just go, I lie. I just lie because it's an instinct.
Well, yeah, and it's, well, in this case, you're saying it was a survival.
It's a survival technique, but then it just carries off into real life, carries off outside of that household, outside of that little family dynamic into the other parts of the world. And when you're in the creative life, yeah, it can be useful. What an imagination you have.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always working.
What a creative
way of looking things.
Creative fellow.
Yeah.
Well, plus the idea of, I've talked to, a lot of people who have had, abusive parents or been in volatile situations, alcoholism, and they would say to me, when I would come home, I would always try to gauge what that person who was unpredictable, if I could ask, they would say, if I could ask somebody before I went in the house, that was always a tool. Or I would sort of, even almost like a sixth sense of walking through the door and feeling what might be the mood in the room, even if it's in the home, even if it's silent.
If I came home and my dad's car was in the driveway, I'd walk around the house and I'd peek in the windows to try to get a gauge. If he's sleeping in his den, okay, I sneak in the back door, I go to my room, don't wake him, don't bother him. If he's sitting at the kitchen table with a beer, I don't know which way this is going to go. Which should I come in the front door, the back door, try to go in the basement window? I'm not even sure to go in. I don't know. It depends on what time I'm coming in. Am I coming in from football practice, wrestling practice? I've been out late messing around with my buddies, been out too late. There's so many factors. But I'd go around the house and peek in the windows trying to figure out where he was and what was going on. If I go in, I see him watching TV, there's a show on, he's laughing, fantastic. I could walk through the front door and things have got a pretty good shot of being okay. Right? You just don't know. You just don't know. You'd always have to check it out.
It's a heightened sense of fight or flight.
Yeah, a very good one. I had a very good instinct of if I could take a shot at this person having a fight, I'd stay and fight, but I had a pretty good instinct of how I could stack up. How I could stack up. And one of the things my dad gave me was the ability to take a punch.
I know we're laughing now.
It is true. It is true. I had a lot of fights where I was like, remember Cool Hand Luke, where he fought George Kennedy and he just kept getting up. I won a lot of fights by just keep getting up. And guys were like, I can't, he keeps getting up. I'm done.
Stay down.
Yeah. But there are a couple of them where they go, stay down, man. I was like, funny, just go, I think I'll stay down. I think I've had it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. All right, so then you're off to college and you become a comedian, and now you can stay out really late, do a lot of drugs and alcohol.
Well, I didn't become a comedian in college.
Right after.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and
later.
But that was, and so at that point you're not really remembering feeling depressed, even though it was in the letters you're talking about, but you're not.
I don't remember. Yeah, right. But it was obviously something was going on. But when I wrote those letters, every time I wrote one of those letters, I was writing from my hometown. So I was writing from my parents' house, or that time period, freshman or sophomore year of college or whatever. That those letters came, and I was writing to her when she would go home on break. So I'd go home on break, I'd be back into that dynamic, and I'm sure I got depressed.
Yeah.
But at college, I was running wild, and I was establishing myself as a wild guy. He's funny, he's crazy, and I liked that reputation I was getting. So I don't think I remember being depressed in that area.
Well,
Hungover maybe, but not depressed.
Yeah. Well, there must have been a real sense of freedom to not have that person or keep having an eye on you, and then taking it even as like now I can take it as far as I want to take it because there's no supervision.
I think kids go through that. Every kid I think that goes away to college, right? You have to survive that first year of like, oh my God, my parents aren't around to say no.
Right.
I mean, that's a dangerous situation. It's exhilarating, but everybody has to. And most people handle that transition a week or two. They go, all right, I'm here to get grades now. I'm here to study.
Right.
Okay, I've had my little run there, Okay.
That was a rough weekend.
Right.
I'm not going to do that for a while.
Yeah, I remember a guy in college. He became a lawyer because he had that kind of discipline. He would write down he'd get his schedule, see when the exams were and all those kind of things, and he'd write down on his calendar what days he could get drunk.
He had a party schedule.
He had a party schedule, 1 or 2 days a week, whatever. He had the different days written down, and he'd hold to those days. But I was the guy, no matter who was on a party day, I was available.
Right.
Right.
Is this your party day?
I'm here. I'm here for you, man. I'm here to support.
So you, I don't want to say functioned. You did, but you functioned without having depression debilitate you.
That's right.
For a long time.
Long time.
And then when did it start to...
When I stopped doing stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy gave me a lot. I didn't realize how much it helped balance me or soothe or whatever it was. I stopped performing.
But you had already stopped drinking.
I'd stopped drinking, 85. I stopped performing around 96, 97, right? I was writing for TV.
Yeah.
Roseanne, you were there, right?
So there was 10 years after you stopped doing drugs and alcohol that you didn't have this level of depression that hit you in 96 or 95.
Right. I had kids, and all of a sudden, man, I was hit with depression and bad, and I went through a lot of psychiatrists, not just therapists. They sent me to psychiatrists, and before they just started putting me on meds, they were trying to figure out what the problem was. And most of them thought that I had been sexually abused, but I had not. I had no memories of it. Did all sorts of things to try to recover memory, but nobody found anything.
So there was...
I was diagnosed with PTSD, bipolar, clinically depressed. Those were the three big things I was diagnosed with. And they started putting me on antidepressants.
What was the... do you remember the name of the first one?
Oh, man.
I mean, do you know? Give me the names of some of them, because I know there's a lot of
list. I can only remember the last one. I did
Prozac and
all the things. The beginning was, but the end, the last one was Depakote, Abilify, Wellbutrin, and one other one that was an antipsychotic.
And were you taking multiples?
I was taking 4. Oh yeah, 4. There was 4 different medications at the end. And the psychiatrist, this was like 2010, 2011, the last run of those things before I bottomed out in UCLA psych unit. And they just changed after 13 days at UCLA psych unit in the spring of 2011, they just changed my meds. I went from lithium to Depakote, from something else to Wellbutrin, to Abilify, they just switched medications. But they were all basically the same sort of things: antipsychotics, antidepressants.
Well, I've been watching a couple of documentaries because we've talked about this, and there's a number of them out there. The last one I just watched was called Antidepressants, and it was a whole study that the filmmakers did on the history of psychiatry and how this started to come about. And one of the things that they were, and it's a documentary, so is it, biased? I don't know. Probably a little bit, but one of the things they were talking about, and these were a lot of the psychiatrists that prescribed these things, is that they were saying basically there is no actual quantifiable way to look at it, these issues as a disease. It's not like you have high cholesterol and you can test for it. It's not like you have, a heart condition and there's artery blockage and it can be measured. They all said it's guesswork. It's hit and miss.
Total.
We don't know a lot of how these psychotropic drugs work. We don't even know if some of them work. And we'll talk about the money aspect here.
If they have a pill that they brought this pill out to use to cure psoriasis, and then they find out that it also eases depression, they'll start, oh my God, we got a multi-use for this pill.
Yeah.
We can now prescribe it for depression as well as psoriasis. And that's a lot of what happens, I think. And in fact, the psychiatrist admitted exactly what you just said. Every psychiatrist I went to said, there's no blood test. I can't take your blood test. There's no brain scan that goes, oh, okay, look at this over here. We know this over here, so we got to tweak this with this.
But they, one of the things that this film that I just watched was talking about how they are seeking to come up with new diagnoses. There's one that's it's a fairly benign one, but it's generalized anxiety. I call that being alive. But
once you're at the age of 10 and you realize how many ways there are to die, and that people die, you're going to die. You should have a general level of anxiety the rest of your life.
Yeah, and how
there's a general level. I'm going to die at some point.
Right.
Somehow I'm going to die. It may be a horrific death.
Right.
There should be a little bit of anxiety about that for you for the rest of your life.
And there's anxiety about making a living and getting along with people.
Sure.
So that's like
I drive out in the traffic.
I mean, it's like saying general.
Yeah. You want to see real anxiety? Watch a squirrel come out of a tree. There's some real anxiety.
Yeah.
Watch the way the squirrel looks around.
So I'm watching this, and I'm listening to some of the people who had. I guess you want to call it an adverse reaction, which I'm being sort of gentle in terms of what some of these reactions were, where they lost control of some of their most primal instincts, and they were getting violent and suicidal, and some of them, many of these people were claiming to have lost loved ones who were not in a bad way at all before they were put on certain psychotropic drugs. And they had huge personality changes, and they were suicidal, or that they were either successful or unsuccessful in their attempts. And so I always wonder, what are we doing as a society where so many people? I mean, there's testing. Let me just say this: there was a test that they were given, and to some people, and they would ask them these sort of open-ended questions like, are you ever sad? And the answer would be like, well, a lot, sometimes, never. And if you answered sometimes, that would put you up at a certain number. And if you had enough of those sort of sometimes, which everyone does, then they would say, well, you're moderately to, lightly depressed, and you should seek, a professional to speak to because you may have depression. You may have this, and people would, listen to these quote professionals, and then get put on these drugs, and it's for a lifetime. A lot of them, and I know you were told that.
I was told that. I was told I'd be on drugs for the rest of my life. It's like a sentence. And now it's been 5 years, and people who haven't seen me for a long time, they go, "Wow, man, there's a difference."
There is.
People who were around me said I was almost in a drooling state. That I was walking around dull. The lights were not on. And creatively, I was in this, this addict. I was in this addict. I was just in this little crawl space. And I can't tell you how much better I feel now. Much better. It's unbelievable.
So you were you were 10 years, 11 years sober, no drugs or alcohol,
Right.
and
So if there was about a
so it sort of hit you like it's almost like a revisit of something that happened from your childhood. All of a sudden, is coming at you.
Yeah, it did. It did. It came at me with a lot of the things that I remembered. My early childhood, I went into this one psychiatrist he was an expert in violence, and he helped bring back a lot of memories, things that I had kind of had vague recollections of, but I didn't really piece it together. How much there was of it. One of my earliest memories is crawling away from my dad under the kitchen table when I was like 2 years old, 3 years old. Him coming after me, screaming, you know. So I don't know what I don't know what it was, right? That why that came up then. My only thought was it's the time when I stopped doing stand up. Stand up was a real balm for me. It was a real, whatever you want to say, the music of the laughter, the approval from the applause and the laughter and whatever it was. Those moments on stage when I just felt so in with people. That does that for me too. Where I generally feel disconnected from people, but when I'm on stage, I feel totally connected and tribal, and I go, we are one. We're all sort of one, and I feel that feeling.
And you're also in control.
Right, and control. So all those things together, I was getting that from Stamp. When I took that away, I went into a tailspin. There's no doubt about it. It's not a coincidence, I don't think. Because when I came back to doing stand-up again, it feeds me. It feeds me some way.
And so was it a slow build back into this feeling of being depressed, or did it just all of a sudden...
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. Yeah. It definitely, like I say, by 96, 97, I was not doing stand-up much, or I was done with it. It wasn't long after, so from 97, 98 or whatever, that I was on antidepressants until 2011.
And were you on antidepressants after you got sober?
Not until then.
Okay, so you had that 10 years of nothing. And then it just, almost, right. I want to say blindsided you.
Right, right.
And how did it manifest itself at the second, as an adult when it happened again?
I didn't have those panic attacks. I got depressed a lot, and manic sometimes, like just hyper spending, sexuality, what I've read in the past from bipolar. Now, I don't have that now.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I do certain things every day to try to keep myself level, but I don't have that. Every once in a while it's a really light panic attack where I just get very light, and I just go through it.
Manageable.
Very manageable. Yeah. Nothing like I remember as a kid, or even, those years ago in the late 1990s.
So 5 years ago, you wind up in UCLA psychiatric. What was that like?
I don't get out of the bed for 13 days, literally. They kept going down the group. I don't want to go group. Come on down the group. Come on, Rich. Come on, you have to come down the group. No, I'm not going down the group, man. I'm laying here. I just did exactly there what I did here. And I'd get up and I'd go get something to eat.
And they didn't.
They're paying me my bills. The psychiatrists would come in and talk to me. I'd lay in the bed there, and then they brought in some other people to talk to me. Then they had they had the psychiatrists on the rounds with the residents. Right, that whole bunch of them come in. They go, "This is clinical depression here. We're just seeing." I remember them talking about me as if I was
a case study.
Like an animal in a cage. And I go, "Look here, this is the species right here. Examine it. Look at it." And everybody's asked me questions.
So
food didn't taste well. Nothing. I had no desire for anything. Didn't want to hear music. Didn't want to hear TV. I'd yell at the guy to turn the TV off. I didn't want to hear the TV.
Were the sounds?
It's just everything irritated. Everything was. I didn't get enjoyment out of anything. I lost enjoyment of everything. Everything was gray.
And so, they obviously were trying different medications.
Then they switched my medications while I was in there. They go, we'll take you off all of these and put you on these. And
was there a weaning period off of?
No, we just kind of switched off. There was no get off of those. And when I stepped down, when I came out and got off all the medications, it was a period of stepping down. I think it was a month and a half. I can't remember exactly what it was. was quite a bit of time when I went down gradually off of everything that I was taken from the psychiatrist who prescribed.
Why would they let you out, or if you weren't?
Insurance? Insurance was up. I was covered for 13 days, I guess.
Oh, so there was no improvement. While you were in there.
No.
I don't know why it was.
They housed me. They kept trying to talk me into doing electroshock therapy.
Oh, seriously?
Seriously. Oh my God, they pushed that every day to come in. Look, people are getting tremendous benefits. It's not like what you think. You'll be completely unconscious. You won't even know it. You'll go in. You'll be unconscious.
What does that mean? They drug you to the.
Well, they knock you out, so you don't have that convulsive. You've seen the videos.
So they knock you out with a drug.
They knock you out with a drug, and then you get the electroshock. So when you have the convulsion, when your body does that convulsive thing that you've seen in movies and everything, you're not aware of it. You're out. You don't. They don't put the thing in there so you can't bite your tongue and all that. But you don't have that. Where you're laying there, aware that you're being
Somehow
shot.
It's even creepier than the other way.
And they go, oh, this. Listen, people, and there were people in there who were coming in for tune-ups because they have to come back every once in a while to get more electroshock. And then they also tell me that they'd get memory loss from the electroshock. Right? Yeah, was there any downside? Yeah, I can't remember things like, my wife's birthday or whatever. I can't remember stuff. There are things I have some short-term memory loss or whatever.
And you forgot to put on your pants.
Yeah. You're not wearing any pants.
Oh, yeah.
All that too, yeah. Well, But yes, and there were people who were coming in. They would come in just to get the electroshock and then be back out.
So it's a rotating checkup, like an oil
Like they
change?
have to come in every year and a half, whatever. You got to come in for electroshock therapy.
And that is
to fight the depression. They were suggesting that for me to end this depression I was in, because this was just clearly.
And you
I was
said,
depressed.
I'm not.
No, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. Not interested. Not doing it.
Okay, so 13 days.
And that was I look back and I go, thank God that I did that for myself. I'm telling you, Bob, every day they had multiple people coming in trying to convince me that would be the best thing to do. And they had me talk to people who were doing it. And they were all, and then I look at them and I go, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't see really like zest for life in you. You still look depressed to me. Coming in there for it, or they get it and they go out. They were like just flatlined,
Oh, man.
It's not like they were going, hey, man, I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
They were like,
but it's, I still find that interesting that you, or that there was some sort of inner voice or inner strength or inner knowledge that you, even in the midst of that desperate place.
I think it's one of these times where my contempt prior to investigation paid off.
Oh, okay. That simple?
I think that's it. I think it's one of the few times, or many times, I don't know, but definitely one of those moments where I go, no, I'm not interested.
No matter what they said.
It wasn't modeled well to me. There was nobody there, like I said, they would come in and going, I'm fit, I'm a comedian, I'm having a great time out there, I'm dancing, I'm getting out with people, I'm socializing, and electroshock has done this for me. There were just people coming in going, I'm able to survive out there.
Right. And it went from really suck to just kind of suck.
Yeah. I didn't see anybody who modeled it that I felt like that was I want to buy that because you have it.
Wow. So you got out.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I went down one time. I went down and strung beads in the physical therapy one time. They convinced me to go out. I think the only time in the 13 days I left the place was to go. A really nice woman came and said, "Why don't you come down here and just?" They were doing like stringing some beads or something. I go, "Oh, okay, I'll come down." And she kind of led me down there, and I just sat there and strung beads for like an hour or two, like necklaces, bracelets, and stuff. And then I made a whole bunch of them. She was, "We're gonna do it. We give them away to these kids or whatever." I said, "Yeah, go give them away. Yeah, so you want to keep them or do we give them away?" So they got like a whole pile of bracelets and necklaces that we'd all made, and then give them to somebody or whatever. But we're like cheap labor for gifts or something. I don't know what it was, but that's the only time I did anything outside of laying in that bed.
So when you went home, and it was basically an insurance thing, you're saying they just went, that's it, that's all we can cover in here. You go home, you're still in the same place.
Right.
What was the next thing that happened, or the next?
You know Alan Bursky?
I do.
Yeah, he's a legendary
Yes.
comic in terms of being the youngest guy ever to do the Tonight Show and all.
Yeah.
And he was bugging me. He wanted me to write a show for him. He kept calling.
A stand-up show?
Yeah, well, a one-man show of the boomer humor, like where I would write jokes. Back when we were kids, we didn't have a cell phone. We had yelling across the hall, whatever. I don't know, whatever.
Okay.
And it's like, I'm not writing anything. I'm done. And he said, then he finally figured, he goes, well, if he got me healthy, then maybe I could write it for him. So he said, there's this guy who says, you can talk to him. He would help you. Therapist. I'm not seeing more therapists. Well, this guy's been sober X amount of years. Really? Okay. He said, why don't you come see him one time?
How did Alan?
This guy's a therapist who, and Alan told me he's a therapist and he works with a lot of comics, guys
Oh, okay. So he's been in the comedy world.
Yeah, he worked. He's
a
almost a
therapist.
specialist in stand-up comic.
Really? Oh, I didn't tell me that. Okay.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
So
a lot of stand-up comics have some depression issues.
Yeah. So I said, all right, and he said, but you got to come over and see him. I was, oh man, I couldn't drive. It was all I could do to drive over to West Hollywood. There was so much anxiety driving the car. I couldn't believe it. I was so frightened, and so it was nerve-wracking. That's all I can explain. Just classic nerve-wracking. And I drove over to him, and he talks to me a while, and he goes, yeah. And what medication take? I told him all the medication. I think I brought him all over, bottles of pills. He said, yeah, we're going to get you off all this stuff. I go, really? I mean, I like that.
First thing he said.
We're going to get you off all of this medication. Get you off all of this. And you're going to go get a new mentor, a new spiritual mentor. I go, yeah, he's going to help you work through these things. You get a spiritual solution to your problem, and because Julian, the therapist, he's a recovering alcoholic too. And he sent me over to give me an address. So I really talked to him for 10 minutes or so this first time. Now, I talked to him subsequently longer after this other times, but this first time I was only there for a few minutes, and he sent me back to Sherman Oaks, which is only like a mile away from where I'm living.
Yeah.
I go, why didn't you send me this address to begin with? I had to drive over here, drive all the way back.
He had to meet you.
Yeah, and I went back and I drove over here and I called him up, and Vic Anderson answered the phone, and this is Reggie. Yeah, Julian told me you were going to call, and why don't you come on right over? And I came over and talked to him and started changing my life immediately. Everything. If I walked to the house, he greets me at the door. Now, this is the first time I've been out going to see Julian, not going over to him. Hadn't been out of the house in weeks and weeks. And he hands me a tray of potted plants. These little potted plants you get like a Ralph's, one of those little plastic trays with whatever, a dozen of these potted plants on it. And an address to a senior living home nearby in Sherman Oaks. I can't remember exactly where it was. And he said, take these over there to the senior home. Then they know I send people over from time to time. Tell them you're with me, and they'll let you go to the rooms and hand these out to people and talk to them a little bit. Ask them who they are, where they're from, whatever. Just talk to them a little bit. When you finish doing that, come on back and see me. So immediately he started, and I don't know why I didn't go, I'm not doing this, because I can't imagine somebody would give this to me as an assignment to do it. But I was just, that desperation, so I was willing, that classic desperation, so I was willing. And I did it. And then I came back and we started talking, and I just bought everything he said. I just said, this guy has got a spiritual way about him. He's got a calmness, and he liked to laugh, and he had a lightness to him, and whatever he suggested from then on, I did till he died a year ago. For the next 4 years, I did everything he suggested. And it just changed my whole life. He was from the same group of people that I was with that got sober. I mean, he was from, he came from that system, and so I had real comfort with him right from the beginning.
Yeah, but I was wondering about, I guess the first thing that intrigued me about what you're saying is when Julian said, we're going to get you off all this stuff. I want you to go see this guy.
Yeah.
He was not concerned about getting you off that stuff. He had obviously done that with other people. It sounds like he was super calm about that. And
he was confident.
Not seeing it as an issue. and not a risk. Like,
Yeah.
what if we, I guess, conventional medicine would say, this guy's going to be a huge risk if we take him off this stuff.
No, he was like, you're like untreated alcoholism. You're anger and rage, and you need to deal with that. We're going to deal with that. And really, literally, I started working with Vic, hanging out with Vic and doing the things he suggested, and went to see Julian once or twice a week. We talk about things, and immediately hooked me up with a psychiatrist whose one and only job was to step me down. I saw the guy one time, and then he would go, okay, you're taking this. Now today, he wrote me out a whole thing. Here's what you're going to take tomorrow. Here's what you're going to take the next day. And it was just stepping me down.
And
that's
you
all
never
he did.
saw him again.
Never saw him again. And he'd call up and go, where are you now? Okay, now take this. His, basically, part of his thing is to get people off of antidepressants.
Which his?
This psychiatrist. It was sort of like, people are, my profession are over medicating the country. And I sort of like see it as there are a few people that really have to have certain medications or they're not going to be able to function. You're not one of those people.
And he knew that just from a...
Well, he just came in and met me. And he's like, we talked and he went, yeah, I see what's going on. I don't think you're one of those people who has to take medication. You can do other things to deal with your depression, your anxiety, and all this sort of stuff.
So there was essentially you were told to get off the medication and to take a spiritual approach
Right.
to changing your life. Was there any other, along with the spiritual approach, was there a certain type of, I want to say supplements or exercise?
Oh, I know those things I do.
Yeah.
And I exercise. I try to eat well. I know from personal experience that too much sugar is not going to be good for me. And that means not doing any sugar because I don't know how to do anything but too much sugar. Yeah, that's it. I did prayer and meditation and cleaning up my behavior and my situation with other people due to my behavior, making amends to people and all those sorts of things. And when I did all that, all of a sudden I was like functioning better, just functioning better. It was an approach that I had available to me before that I drifted away from. But, I had a real problem with the whole God thing, a huge problem with it. So I sort of avoided it. Vic was like, he's a Buddhist, and his was like, well, you don't understand everything, right? Yeah, well, how about just believe in the fact you don't understand everything? So believe in the possibility. Believe in the possibilities. And that was huge for me. And that's the simplest of things.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I don't know who I'm praying to. I don't know if anybody's listening to my prayers. I don't pray for things, but the prayer of just knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out and all that sort of thing. I don't know anybody ever listens. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
Well, clearly, even if it doesn't matter, it's changed.
It's changed me.
I mean,
it's changed one person. It always helps one person, me. All my prayers always helps me. And that's all that really matters. When I pray for things that just, I don't pray for things for myself. If I pray, I hope that this guy gets through this health crisis or whatever. I don't know if any actual benefit comes to him for that. It doesn't matter. It makes me feel good to do it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? What's the harm in that? I'm not
None.
asking anybody to join me. I'm not asking anybody to give me money so I can pray for somebody. Just the simple act of it. And the meditation is, huge.
That must have been difficult at first, I would imagine, coming off of those medications and trying to sit quietly and knowing that you must have been, were you a little bit scared about
I was
changing?
so ready to come off those medications, Bob. I would have stopped them immediately if they said, just stop them. Just throw them all out. I was so just finished with it. I didn't believe any of it helped me. It hadn't helped me for years.
Yeah.
It put me in a situation. I just instinctively had a feeling these meds that helped put me in the situation I'm in. As much as anything else. There's no reason for a man my age to be affected by things that happened in my youth like that when I've already, if there's no such thing as processed it or understand it, I did all that.
Right.
Amends to my dad made amends to me. There's nothing was between us that was like
haunting you.
Nothing. There's no reason. That wasn't the cause of any of it anymore. Just my normal discontent and irritable nature and all that. Yeah, my normal selfish, self-centered attitude. Yeah, that to tweak those every day, I need to do it. But most people do anyway.
Yeah.
Just like you said, most people suffer from it. I get sad once in a while. Yeah, guess what? I get sad and also laugh. Right. So there's two sides of the coin.
I love hearing that an actual psychiatrist is saying we overprescribe in this country, and one of the things that I was watching in this movie, and that we can actually have some. Rich and I know someone that was a rep for one of the big pharma companies, and in the movie they didn't actually get into this part of it, but they did talk about the billions and billions with a B of how much these psychotropic drugs are being pushed and sold, and it's the perfect scam. You're flawed, and you need to be taking this stuff for the rest of your life because of this flaw that's in it, a disease that's undiagnosable that you have for the rest of your life. And stuff's expensive, and if it doesn't work, we have another one. And one of the ways they, and many of the regulatory people and the FDA and the psychiatrists that approve or disapprove of the drugs, but mainly approve of them. It's a little bit of a revolving door. They go from jobs in the government to psychiatry to
they're in the government, and then they become lobbyists for big pharma.
Yes, and so there is that, as with the financial industry, that's the same way with the pharmaceutical companies. And so I just wanted to share this story because we know a woman who was a rep for one of the pharmaceutical companies, and we won't have to say her name or anything, but she was telling. Well, why don't you just describe how she's
a very beautiful woman, very sexy woman, and she said she was doing
how
this.
Old when she was doing
late 30s.
Okay, so a young woman.
Mid-30s. To our standards. But you're young, very young. But anyway, she said that a lot of the women are going in there dressed to kill.
In there means to be
to see a doctor. They go in to see a doctor. They're reps, so they go talk to the doctors. What do you need? I'm here. I have things I have medications here that you can sell, and they go in there. They're dating the doctors. They're crossing all sorts of lines professionally because they're in there to sell physicians. And most of the physicians they're selling to still are men. There's still a lot of men, and these are beautiful young women, and they're coming in there. And she said, this is her quote, "It's really legalized prostitution." A lot of what was going on. That was her quote. And I met them. One time I was hanging out with her, and I met a couple of the women that she worked with. And they were gorgeous. I mean, they were just, they were like former actress types, model types. And they go and they sell some drugs.
And is it all women in that profession?
I don't know if it's all women as pharmaceutical reps, but this was her telling me, and the couple that I met were women. They were very pretty women at her age. She says a lot of these pharmaceutical reps are good-looking young women.
They work on commission?
I can't imagine not.
Yeah,
sales rep, isn't that the whole thing? Sales rep.
It is. So they have a financial incentive.
They have a financial incentive.
And the doctors have an incentive to buy.
The doctors have an incentive to. I don't know if they get anything for selling. I think there was a thing that came out about that not too long ago about the doctors getting free trips to Hawaii and all these sort of things that they forced the industry. I think the government has forced the industry to stop these sort of incentives to sell drugs. That's what they're doing.
Well, I know one of the things they talk about.
The doctors are selling so much drugs, they get a free trip to Hawaii, they get this, they get that. They sort of get bonuses themselves.
Yeah.
So they said, you can't do that. But I don't know how it works on the other end, right? I mean...
Well, I'm sure there's a markup.
No, I meant on the other end, the pharmaceutical reps, I don't think there's been no prohibition on them selling as much as they can to the doctors.
Oh, yes.
Right?
I can't imagine
Right.
that there would be.
Right.
And one of the things that, was done is the doctors will say, the psychiatrists will say, here's a free sample, see if it works for you. Try it. It's not going to cost you anything.
Like the classic
Yeah,
drug peddler.
Right.
But my experience was there's always a lag time before it kicks in. So they give it to you to go, it's going to be a couple of weeks before this medication works. Then we'll find out. But every time you go in even if you just go in for a med visit, the psychiatrist is getting a couple $100 for the med visit, which is basically you just going in to get another order. It's a 15-minute med visit. You go in, how you doing? Well, my eyes aren't spinning around, are they? They just kind of glance at you and go, well, you don't look homeless. Okay. A couple $100. She's paying a couple $100 for a med visit. How many of those can they pack in a day?
Well, if it's
right?
15
It's not
minutes.
an hour, not like you're sitting there for 45 minutes an hour talking about your problems and this and that. You're doing a med visit. They're just writing you a script for whatever it is, and then you're handing them a few $100 for your drugs, plus whatever you're going to get copay or if you have to pay out of pocket.
And who pays for the med visits? So that's out of your pocket?
That's out of your
Or
pocket,
insurance
generally. Well, if the insurance will
bit.
cover it, I don't know what your insurance is. Same as the drugs
So
themselves.
it's just
It's a lot of money. A lot of money. Follow the money, Mr. Geddes. Follow the money.
Yes, I will.
We're not even talking about Oxycontin or any of those kind of things. We're not talking about Xanax. We're talking about the things they claim are psychotropic, that are non-addictive, they're not opiates. We're talking about things that they claim would just supply the chemicals in your brain that are missing. That's what you hear a lot of.
Yeah, right.
You don't have the chemical capacity to the upload of the serotonin that you need. This will facilitate that. That's what they claim a lot of these things do.
Yeah. How do they figure that stuff out if they can't test for it?
And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how they figure it out, and certainly how do they figure out the one. I said a lot of the times these things happen, and I've heard this, and I don't know, and I've read some things where they go, a drug company has, like I said, they already have a product, and then if they can find out, well, this product, like this antipsychotic, will also work for anti-anxiety. Great. Now you have a psychotic where you're seeing visions and you're schizophrenic. That drug that we're giving this schizophrenic, and how many schizophrenics are out there? Not as many as people who have anxiety problems, and that'll now work for your anxiety disorder. Now we're going to make some money off this drug. Again, it's a multi-use for the drug. So they have people. There wasn't that guy that claimed that. Isn't the guy who created the ADD diagnosis? Didn't he then come out and say, "I made it up"?
I didn't read that, but that's
there was somebody. There's one of those sorts of diagnoses that's come out in the last 20 years. Like when you were growing up, nobody talked about anti-anxiety or kids being. What is it? Would they give out for young boys when they got it?
Ritalin.
Ritalin, or what's the other one? There's a couple of them. Ritalin. There's sort of forms of speed, really, to calm kids down.
Right, they have the opposite effects, supposedly.
Right. What is that? How come we didn't, when we were growing up, it was just like boys being boys. And I think there are a couple of books, and I read an excerpt for one talking about, this is sort of like management of the male population. Like the things that young boys were valued for growing up, their aggressive nature, their things that when you go out in the world and you explore and you create things and you conquer things, all that sort of aggressive male energy is not really wanted in the world that much anymore. Really, the world's about managing what we have, because we've kind of like discovered everything we have. So now we have to control these young boys and this behavior, which is it's more vilified than it is valued.
Yeah.
Right? So now when these boys get these surges of testosterone in their bodies when 3 or 4 years old, now we want to medicate them instead of going, boys will be boys. Remember growing up, hey, boys will be boys. Act up a little bit, but slap Johnny in the head, get him back in line.
Yeah.
Now it's like slap a couple pills in his diet, get him back in line.
Well, I heard a guy speak who was he was diagnosed with when he was a kid, he was diagnosed as a bad kid, basically.
Bad seed.
A bad seed. And
Yeah.
and they said to him, "You're a loser. You're a troublemaker.
Wow.
You're never going to amount to anything." And later on he was and later in life he was diagnosed with some sort of obsessive compulsive or he definitely had something going on with him where he said it was really interesting. He goes, the one thing I couldn't do was sit still in a desk. But not one person ever thought of, why don't we let this guy get up and walk around the back of the room while we teach? He said, so, I encourage teachers that have kids like me to let them do that, or to take a break more often and let kids run around a little bit more.
They don't have that now at school. We used to have recess. The whole point of recess was go run around the playground. Go run and do that thing with your energy.
Yeah.
We got twice a day. We'd have those recess breaks.
Yeah, I remember that. They don't do that anymore.
No.
My kids are a little older now, so I don't.
No, they don't have that sort of thing.
Phys ed. I mean, they have that.
Do they still have phys ed? I don't know.
They have
but
that
you have to have that. I don't know.
But just this idea that he was, and the guy was, he's an educator now, and he's really an intelligent guy. I can't think of his name right now. He speaks all around the country, but he was talking about, there was no sense of that, and now if he was that kid, right, he would have been heavily medicated. He was just basically tossed aside and called a juvenile delinquent, and they just dismissed him as a human being. Wow. So he was able to at least not be drugged out and find his way.
Yeah.
However he did it.
Yeah.
But now that's exactly what would happen. He would be medicated, heavily medicated, probably to sit still and to be in a chair.
Yeah, some of these medications like Ritalin, people who have addictive problems have become addicted to these things because they're a form of speed. If you're not really, whatever it is, diagnosed, if you don't really have that thing or that far extreme part of it, it's really just a speed. Ritalin, there's another one that they're prescribed now. Can't think of it at the moment, but
there's what they also do now,
Adderall, and Ritalin are the two ones they describe mostly for young boys. They say, he's got ADHD.
Well, they're also repackaging the same drug under different names for different uses, like you were saying. I was seeing that. I would recommend to anyone that's hearing this to check out some of these documentaries.
There's a book called Prozac Nation my sister read because they wanted to medicate her son at a certain age. This is an older book now.
Yeah.
And she's like, no way. She read this book, told me about it. I said, jeez. Prozac Nation.
Well, I mean, the good news is that I think there's more information coming out about it, and if you do the research before you do this stuff. I mean, they basically, with this last documentary I watched, was don't trust the doctors with your health. I always say there's nothing more dangerous than a professional. So, it's you have that degree, that badge.
I want to take this book I just wrote and go into that psychiatrist who told me I'd be on for life and just toss it at him and walk out. Since I saw you last, I wrote this.
Yeah.
Without any medication.
And what do you think he would say? Good for you. There are cases once in a while. Yeah, I don't.
Are you here for a med visit? If not, get out of here.
I mean, I don't think these people are not all of them are necessarily ill-intentioned. I think some of them are. I mean, at the greedy level, there is some of that. But I think, people, there's a belief system that gets put in place, and then people just believe
they also went
forever.
They also went to a lot of schooling, paid a lot of money. Got to get that back.
Yeah.
Gave up a lot of years of their lives of being in schooling.
Let's just talk about the spiritual part again. I always have a little bit of problem with the religious part of spirituality, even if it is. I'm not even sure it's the same thing. To me, it isn't. But
to me, religion is a system of beliefs to explain the unexplainable. I'm not trying to explain the unexplainable anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need that comfort.
What's that wonderful quote? Religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell, and spirituality is for people that have been there.
I love that quote.
And so you're praying, however you do that.
Yeah.
And you're meditating. You're just sitting down, laying down.
I'm going to do that in a little while when you leave. Do it twice a day. Do it twice a day.
Uh-huh.
It's good where I see where it is, and I also run. I run every day, and I don't wear any kind of Walkman, headphones, iPod, whatever. I don't listen to music or anything, and that's an active meditation. Things come into my mind there's a God voice or whatever, but the ideas, the things that come into my mind, not just like creative ideas, but like, oh, I need to make amends to this person for that, or gee, I haven't called him in a while, I should call him. I should tell this person I love him. I haven't done that in a long time. Those kind of thoughts that are thoughts that don't come into my mind when I'm walking around normally or driving a car in traffic. And the meditation does the same sort of thing. It's a great way to see what kind of monkey mind you have.
It sure is.
Just coming back. I'm constantly going off and kind of come back to it, go off and come back to it. That's the simplest of meditation they do. It's not
it's a pretty shocking thing to, not necessarily a bad way, but just to be able to stand outside your mind and watch it work and like, I just thought that's interesting.
Yeah.
Rather than believing it, not necessarily a bad way, but just to be able to stand outside your mind and watch it work and like, I just thought that's interesting.
Yeah.
Rather than believing it.
I heard a great, for me, I love this guy said, you know, I got thoughts coming through my mind all day long. He says, I kind of think of it just like if I'm standing on the sidewalk watching cars drive by in traffic. I watch these cars drive by me, fast, slow, fast, slow. I go, oh, there's a Toyota. Oh, there's a Chevy. I just watch them go by, and they're not a problem. The problem is when I try to grab hold of one of those.
Yeah.
And so when I latch onto a thought, that's when there's a problem. But if just watching them go by in the meditation, wow, just watching it's fascinating sometimes.
That's a great analogy, just to
just let them go.
Yeah.
Just let them go. I have all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of ideas. I mean, you and I know. I mean, I don't. If I have restraint of tongue and pen, I mean, and action, just having these thoughts going. Wow, that's amazing. I thought I'd like to ram my car in this other car. You know? I don't do it,
right.
But it's a thought that comes through my head, and so there's a lot. I don't want to say this to this person. Don't do it. I've learned to get counsel from other people. You know, I'm thinking about doing this. Really, why? Really, why?
Yes, my buddy goes, if you got a good idea, run it by a few people. We love to hear good ideas.
Exactly.
But if it's not a good idea, your friends will tell you.
Yeah,
don't keep it to yourself, though.
Yeah.
It might be something valuable to all of us.
Yeah, usually my best ideas are not good for anybody else. Yeah, or even good for me. Yeah.
Well, I always say that the older I get, the more time I spend, the more energy I spend not saying the stuff I'm thinking. It's actually tiring sometimes in those moments where you just want to tell somebody what they need to hear, what you think they need to hear, or bring somebody down a couple of notches because they're being arrogant.
All those things end up with me later apologizing. So I do less apologizing. When I do less, especially the first thought that comes to my mind, in any kind of situation, my reaction is usually immediate, overreacting, immediate, inappropriate.
Right. That has to be remedied.
Right.
Who's the best man for that job is?
Yeah. So with those thoughts that my first reactions are immediate and inappropriate, right? Then nobody ever needs to hear the first thought that comes to my mind. It's inappropriate. It's outlandish reaction. So if I could just stop that first thought, if I could just stop that first thought from coming out of my mouth, I'm usually. In
the results
shape.
are better.
Better, much better.
But the part of it that I still don't like, it feels unsatisfying sometimes and unfinished. Like, you know what? Maybe that time it would have worked really well.
Yeah. You get less stories that way. You get less stories. All those youthful times that I mouthed off in a bar and I got in a fight. Those are good stories. But at the time, it didn't really feel that good. I can tell you.
Well, I'm glad we're here laughing, man, and thanks for talking to me about this. And
I love you, Bob. You know that.
Love you too, man. And I hope that anyone that's listening to this that's thinking about going on these medications does a little research and thinks about that there may be another way.
There are other ways, I think, but I know there are also people who truly need medication for certain illnesses. We're not saying that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Rich.
All right, buddy.
See you again. Like tomorrow. Okay, that was Ritch Shydner. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I know I enjoyed talking to him because I always do. If you have any comments, things you'd like to see on the show, suggestions, you can email me. That's Bob at theexplodinghuman.com. Or I have a phone number you can call. It's a Google Voice. Very exciting that I'm way into this heavy technology. 424 272 6396. Check out the next podcast coming up. I don't know what it's going to be because I did a bunch of them and I'm trying to figure out the order. So come on back and check it out. Thank you.